All right, ready to geek out with me today because we are diving deep into the Fellowship of the Ring. We're going straight to the source, folks, like actual excerpts from the book itself. So yeah, forget the movies, forget SparkNote summaries. This is for those of you who really want to find those hidden gems, those little wait what moments that even like someone who knows Tolkien might have missed.
What I think is so fascinating about Tolkien is that his world is just so intricate, so layered, that you can reread The Fellowship of the Ring like a dozen times and still find something new.
Oh, absolutely. And to make it even better, you can actually follow along with us. We've got a link to the full text of the Fellowship of the Ring,
Yeah.
totally free down in the episode description. So grab a copy, get comfy, and let's just explore Tolkien's world together.
Excellent idea. Now, to really appreciate the depth of The Fellowship of the Ring, I think we have to start the very beginning with Tolkien's own thoughts on how this epic saga came to be.
Okay, so let's unpack this. So we're talking about the genesis of Middle-earth, right? What what struck me was how Tolkien talks about his struggles with printer errors. I mean, we've all been frustrated by typos, but Tolkien took it to a whole other level.
He did. You remember that passage where he's complaining about dwarves being printed as dwarfs? It seems like such a minor detail, but for Tolkien, language was everything. He poured so much care into crafting the languages and the names in Middle-earth, and to see those painstakingly crafted words just mangled by a typo must have been so frustrating.
Yeah, it's almost funny, right? This guy, incredibly imaginative, creator of entire worlds, and he's getting hung up on something as mundane as a printer's mistake. But it shows you how much he cared about every single detail of his work.
Absolutely. And this attention to detail extends beyond just language, too. Tolkien really fiercely resisted any attempts to interpret the Fellowship of the Ring as allegory. He insisted that it wasn't a veiled commentary on World War II or any other historical event. For him, it was a story, a myth, a legend that stood on its own.
It's like he created this entire world with its own internal logic, its own history, and he didn't want anyone like imposing their own interpretations on it.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so compelling. We're not looking for hidden messages or coded references. We're simply immersing ourselves in this incredibly rich and detailed world that he created.
And speaking of immersion, how about we dive into the Shire and we can get to know the hobbits a little bit better.
Excellent idea. Now, when you think about hobbits, what comes to mind?
Okay, so my initial thought is, of course, small, peaceful, dainty. They love their gardens, they love their food. But, reading these excerpts, I was struck by their deep connection to their history,
Mhm.
their genealogy. They practically have family trees that go back to the beginning of time.
It's true. They might seem simple on the surface, but hobbits have a really rich cultural heritage and they value tradition and ancestry above almost everything else.
It's almost like they've created this bubble of peace and contentment in the Shire,
Right.
a world where, like, the biggest concerns are who's hosting the next birthday party, or if
Wow.
the crops are doing well.
And that's what makes their story so compelling. They're living in this idyllic world, blissfully unaware of the dangers lurking beyond the borders of the Shire. Remember how they talk about the Battle of Greenfield, the last battle fought within the Shire, as if it were ancient history?
Right. Even the wolves that used to threaten their borders have been reduced to like grandfather's tales. It's like they've forgotten that their peace and security aren't a given, that they're reliant on others to kind of keep the darkness at bay.
This raises an interesting question, though. What happens when that bubble of peace is burst? What happens when the Hobbit are forced to confront the reality of the wider world and the darkness that threatens to engulf it?
Makes you realize that their peaceful existence is actually quite fragile, dependent on forces that they barely even understand.
And speaking of things that hobbits hold dear, did you come across that passage about mathams? I found that so fascinating.
Oh, the mathams. Okay, so I have to admit, I'm totally guilty of having my own little collection of mathams. Those little trinkets and souvenirs that you can't bear to throw away, even though they have no practical use whatsoever. It's like the Hobbit version of sentimental clutter.
Exactly. But for hobbits, it goes beyond just sentimental value. Remember how they trace the origins of pikeweed, another hobbit obsession, back to this mysterious figure, Old Toby? It seems like they have this reverence for the past, for the origins of things. Holding on to these mathams, even if it's just a chipped teacup or a faded ribbon, is a way of connecting to their history.
It's like each matham tells a story. Holding on to it, they're keeping that story alive. Makes me think about all those boxes of old photos and letters that people keep in their attics. They might seem like junk to someone else, but they're actually treasures, pieces of a family's history.
And speaking of treasures, we can't forget about the most significant treasure of all, the One Ring. It's in these early chapters of the Fellowship of the Ring that we start to see the subtle ways in which the ring is already exerting its influence.
Oh yeah, here's where it gets really interesting. We know from The Hobbit that Bilbo found the ring in Gollum's cave. But these excerpts kind of shed new light on that encounter. I was struck by how Gollum keeps referring to the ring as his birthday present. It's almost like he's trying to convince himself that it was given to him willingly.
Right, and remember, Bilbo initially tells Gandalf that Gollum gave him the ring as a present as well. But even then, Gandalf is skeptical. He knows Bilbo well enough to sense that something isn't quite right.
It's like the ring is already twisting their perceptions, making them tell half-truths and avoid difficult questions.
Exactly, and this ties into one of Tolkien's central themes, the corrupting power of the ring. Even in these early chapters, we see how the ring is subtly manipulating those who possess it, planting seeds of deceit and greed.
And it's not just Bilbo who's affected. Think about all the rumors surrounding Bilbo's sudden wealth and the strange visitors who start showing up at Bag End. The Gaffer, Frodo's old neighbor, is skeptical. But the younger hobbits are completely captivated by the tales of Bilbo's adventures and his supposed fortune.
The ring is creating this ripple effect, drawing attention, fueling speculation. It's disrupting the peace of the Shire, even though most hobbits are completely unaware of its true nature.
And this all culminates in Bilbo's 11st birthday party, which is basically the Hobbit equivalent of a rock concert.
It's a grand affair, with guests from all over the Shire. And Bilbo, being Bilbo, orchestrates his own dramatic disappearance right in the middle of his farewell speech.
It's such a classic Bilbo move. He loves a good prank, and what better way to go out with a bang than to vanish into thin air, leaving everyone wondering what just happened.
Mm-hmm.
But beneath the humor and the lightheartedness, there are these hints of something darker lurking beneath the surface.
Exactly. Remember Gandalf's sudden departure and his cryptic warnings to Frodo about the ring. He tells Frodo that he has to leave, that there are things he needs to investigate, and he urges Frodo to be careful to trust no one.
It's like a shadow falling over the party. You have all this joy and celebration, and then suddenly there's this sense of unease, a feeling that something is wrong. And poor Frodo, he's caught in the middle of it trying to make sense of what's happening.
And that, my friend, is where we'll pick things up in the next part of our deep dive.
Welcome back. Last time we left Frodo with quite the inheritance, huh? A powerful magic ring and a whole lot of questions. But let's be honest, if anyone's going to be left holding the baggins, it's probably going to be Frodo, right?
He does seem to have a knack for attracting trouble, doesn't he? But remember Bilbo's farewell party, it wasn't just about fireworks and disappearing acts. It was also like the starting point of a much darker story, one that's about to unfold in the Shire.
Right. Things take a turn for the worse almost immediately. Those Sackville Bagginses, can you believe their audacity? They're practically accusing Frodo of stealing like their rightful inheritance.
It's almost comical, isn't it? These hobbits, obsessed with possessions and family lineage, throwing a tantrum because they didn't get their hands on Bag End. But it also kind of speaks to a deeper truth about the Shire, I think. For all its peace and tranquility, there's this undercurrent of pettiness and materialism.
It's like that saying, you can take the Hobbit out of the Shire, but you can't take the Shire out of the Hobbit.
But speaking of hobbits leaving the Shire, remember that Gandalf's sudden departure? He just up and leaves Frodo with this cryptic warning about becoming unpopular. What was that all about?
That's one of the things I love about Tolkien's writing. He drops these little hints, these breadcrumbs that kind of lead you deeper into the story. Gandalf's departure isn't just a plot device. It's a sign that the world is changing, that the shadows are growing longer. He's sensing the danger, but he can't reveal everything to Frodo just yet.
Yeah, it's like he's trying to prepare Frodo for something, but he knows that Frodo isn't ready to face the truth. And then 9 years. 9 years of silence. Can you imagine waiting 9 years for answers? Knowing that something is wrong, but not knowing what. It's such a brilliant move by Tolkien. He creates this sense of anticipation, this growing dread, as we wait for Gandalf to return. And when he finally does, he's like a changed man. The jovial wizard who enjoyed hobbit pipeweed and fireworks is gone, replaced by someone much more somber, more burdened.
It's like the weight of the world is on his shoulders.
Yeah.
And he's finally ready to share that burden with Frodo.
Yeah.
And that's when the truth about the ring comes out. It's not just some trinket that Bilbo found in a cave. It's the One Ring, the source of Sauron's power.
Imagine Frodo's shock.
Right.
He's gone from being like this carefree hobbit, content with his books and his garden, to being the bearer of this terrible burden, this object that could destroy the world.
Yeah.
It's a classic hero's journey, the ordinary person thrust into extraordinary circumstances.
Right. And Gandalf, he doesn't really sugarcoat things either. He tells Frodo about the ring wraiths, the Nazgul, these terrifying creatures that are like hunting for the ring. He talks about Sauron's growing power, his armies gathering in Mordor.
Yeah.
It's enough to make anyone want to crawl back into their hobbit hole and never come out.
But that's the thing about hobbits, isn't it? They might seem small and insignificant, but they have this incredible inner strength, this resilience that allows them to face these unimaginable dangers.
And Gandalf sees that strength in Frodo. He knows that Frodo is the only one who can carry the ring, the only one who can resist its corrupting influence. But even with Gandalf's guidance, Frodo is still a hobbit at heart. He doesn't want to leave the Shire. He wants to stay in his comfortable home and pretend that none of this is happening.
And who can blame him? But the ring, it has a way of forcing your hand, of pushing you out of your comfort zone. It's like it's calling to its master, drawing Sauron's attention to the Shire.
And that's when we meet the unsung hero of the story, Samwise Gamgee. He's eavesdropping, as usual, and he overhears Gandalf talking about the ring and the need to leave the Shire. And what does he do? He blurts out that he wants to see elves.
Oh, bless his heart. It's such a Sam moment. He's so innocent, so full of wonder. He's not thinking about the dangers. He's just excited about the possibility of seeing something magical.
It's like a breath of fresh air amidst all the gloom and doom. And Gandalf, wise as ever, he recognizes that Frodo needs someone like Sam by his side. Someone who's loyal, practical, and maybe a little bit naive.
Sam's presence, it adds a touch of levity to the story, but he's also like a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there's still beauty and wonder to be found in the world.
And as they're like preparing to leave the Shire, they get this chilling reminder of the dangers they face. Sam reveals that a Black Rider, one of the Nazgul, has been asking about Baggins and Hobbiton.
It's a terrifying moment. The shadow of Sauron has fallen upon the Shire, and the hobbits are no longer safe even in their own homes.
Remember the gaffer's description of the Black Rider? This tall, dark figure, his face hidden behind a hood, hissing at him when he learns that Bilbo is gone? It sends shivers down my spine just thinking about it.
Tolkien is such a master at creating suspense. He doesn't need to, explicitly describe the horrors of the Nazgul. He just gives us these glimpses, these hints, and our imaginations do the rest.
And then there's that scene in the woods when Frodo, Sam, Merry, and Pippin are making their way to Buckleberry Ferry. They sense they're being followed, but they can't see anything. Just the sound of hooves, the snuffling of some unseen creature, the feeling of being watched.
It's a masterfully crafted scene. You can practically feel the tension building as the hobbits become increasingly aware of the danger that's lurking nearby.
And just when they think they're about to be caught, they stumble upon a group of elves led by Gildor and Glorian.
Talk about a stroke of luck. But it's more than just luck, isn't it? It's almost like providence, like the forces of good are intervening to help the hobbits.
Yeah. And the elves, with their grace and beauty, they offer the hobbits like a brief respite from the dangers of their journey. They share food and drink, and their songs fill the night with this otherworldly beauty.
It's a reminder that even in a world filled with darkness, there's still beauty and wonder to be found. And it's a reminder that the hobbits are not alone in their fight against Sauron.
But the elves also bring warnings. They talk about the Black Riders, their connection to the enemy, and the increasing danger that even the Shire is no longer safe.
The idyllic world that Frodo once knew is crumbling around him. He's being forced to grow up fast to confront dangers that he never could have imagined.
And he has to make a choice. To
Yeah.
succumb to fear and despair, or to find the courage to continue his journey.
It's a choice that many of us face in our own lives, though perhaps not on such an epic scale. Do we let fear paralyze us, or do we find the strength to face our challenges, even when they seem insurmountable?
And speaking of challenges, how about we talk about Old Man Willow? That guy is the stuff of nightmares.
He is a rather imposing figure, isn't he? This ancient, gnarled willow tree with branches that reach out and try to trap unsuspecting travelers. He represents the darker side of nature, I think, the untamed, primal forces that can be both beautiful and terrifying.
And in this case, he's definitely on the terrifying side. Poor Merry and Pippin get caught in his grasp, and Frodo is overcome by this, irresistible sleepiness. It's a desperate situation, and it seems like all hope is lost.
But then, out of nowhere, comes Tom Bombadil.
Ah, Tom Bombadil. He's one of the most enigmatic characters in Tolkien's world. He's this merry, whimsical figure who seems to exist outside the rules of Middle-earth. He has power over nature, and he's not afraid of anything, not even the ring.
He's like a force of pure joy in life, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there are still pockets of light and laughter.
Right. And he rescues Merry and Pippin from Old Man Willow with a song, no less. And then he invites the hobbits to his home, where they experience a night of peace and comfort.
Tom's home, shared with his wife Goldberry, is a place of warmth and laughter, a sanctuary from the darkness of the outside world.
It's like a fairy tale, a little bubble of happiness where nothing bad can touch them. But as with all fairy tales, it has to come to an end.
Exactly. Tom Bombadil might be powerful within his own domain, but he can't protect the hobbits forever. They have to continue their journey knowing that the perils ahead are only going to increase.
And as they bid farewell to Tom, they feel this sense of loss and foreboding. They're now truly on their own, venturing into lands unknown, and the dangers ahead are greater than ever.
And their next stop is Bree, a village that marks the boundary between the familiar Shire and the wider world. It's a place where men and hobbits mingle, where news and rumors from distant lands are traded over pints of ale.
And it's in Bree, at the Prancing Pony Inn, that they encounter this mysterious figure, Strider, a ranger of the north. What struck me about Strider was that he's described as this tall, dark, brooding figure with a weather-beaten face and these keen, watchful eyes. He's clearly not your typical hobbit.
He's an outsider, a man of mystery. And remember Frodo, still naive about the dangers of the world, he accidentally reveals the ring during a sing-along in the inn's common room.
Could you believe it? He just whips it out like it's no big deal. But of course, it's a huge deal. It's like waving a giant beacon in the face of the enemy saying, "Hey, come and get me."
And Strider, being the perceptive individual that he is, immediately recognizes the danger. He warns Frodo to be careful, to trust no one, especially not Bill Ferny, this shifty character who seems to be working for someone else.
And then, just when things are getting really tense, Mr. Butterbur, the innkeeper, he remembers that he has a letter for Frodo from Gandalf. It's one of those classic Tolkien moments where everything seems lost, and then suddenly there's this glimmer of hope.
The letter, it contains verses that hint at Strider's identity, and it sets the stage for one of the most dramatic reveals in the story. Strider is actually Aragorn, son of Arathorn, heir to the throne of Gondor.
Oh, I love how Tolkien builds up to this moment. He drops these subtle hints about Aragorn's lineage, his knowledge of the ancient world, and then bam, it all comes together in this incredible revelation.
It's a classic hero's journey trope, the hidden prince, the rightful heir who must reclaim his throne. And in Aragorn's case, it's not just about claiming a throne, it's about uniting the people of Middle-earth against the forces of darkness.
Right. And now with Aragorn by their side, the hobbits have a real chance of reaching Rivendell. But of course, it's not going to be easy. The Black Riders are still on their trail, and the danger is only going to increase as they get closer to Mordor.
And that's where we'll have to leave things for now. But don't worry, we'll be back with the final part of our deep dive, where we'll explore the perils of Weathertop, the sanctuary of Rivendell, and the formation of the Fellowship.
Welcome back. We left off, with a real cliffhanger. The hobbits, guided by, Aragorn, are racing towards Rivendell. But they've got these terrifying Black Riders on their tail. It's like straight out of a nightmare.
Well, it really is. And remember, this is not just some chase scene. It's like a test of Frodo's courage and his ability to resist, the ring's influence, which is like constantly growing. Every step towards Rivendell, it's also a step closer to Mordor. And the closer they get to Mordor, the stronger that pull becomes.
It's interesting, right, how Tolkien uses the landscape to kind of reflect that growing danger. The Shire, it's all rolling hills and green fields, a place of peace and comfort. But as they journey north, everything gets harsher, more desolate. It's like the world itself is mirroring the darkness closing in.
That's a great point. And, as they travel, Aragorn reveals more about himself and the history of Middle-earth. Those stories he tells about the ancient kings of men, the fall of Numenor, the line of Elendil, it's all connected to this struggle against Sauron.
I love how Tolkien just weaves these ancient legends and prophecies into the story. Gives it this epic, almost mythic quality, like we're watching events that have been foretold for centuries, and makes Aragorn's role even more important. He's not just some random ranger. He's like the heir to the throne of Gondor, a descendant of kings, destined to fight Sauron.
Yeah, it's a classic hero's journey, isn't it? The reluctant leader, the hidden prince who has to embrace his destiny. But before Aragorn can even think about reclaiming his throne, they have to survive, the perils of the road. And one of the most terrifying encounters happens at Weathertop.
Oh man, Weathertop, chills. This ancient watchtower, right, on top of a hill, surrounded by this desolate, windswept landscape, and then the Black Riders appear. Dark figures against the twilight sky, like something out of a horror movie.
And what's even more terrifying is that they're not just physical threats, they're spiritual threats. Remember, they were once kings of men, seduced by the rings, now they're wraiths, enslaved to Sauron. They represent like the ultimate corruption of power, the loss of individuality, free will.
Yeah, and Frodo, he gets wounded by the Witch King, leader of the Nazgul.
Yeah.
And it's not just a physical wound either, it's a spiritual wound. It's like the darkness is seeping into him, poisoning his soul.
That's such an important point. Tolkien makes it clear that the ring's power isn't just about physical domination. It's about corrupting the mind, the spirit. The Witch King's blade, it's like imbued with dark magic, a symbol of that corruption.
Like a taste of what awaits Frodo if he gives in to the ring. And at that point, it seems like it's over,
Yeah.
All hope is lost. But then, just when you think things can't get any worse, Gandalf arrives.
Talk about a dramatic entrance, just in time, scatters those Black Riders, rescues the hobbits from certain doom. It's a reminder that even in the darkest times, good is still out there, working in the world.
But even Gandalf can't stay. He knows they got to get Frodo to Rivendell fast. That wound from the Witch King is more than just a flesh wound. It's magical. It's slowly poisoning him.
And so their desperate flight to Rivendell begins, racing against time, trying to outrun the Black Riders and, that growing darkness inside Frodo. It's just so thrilling, so much danger, so much suspense.
And they're joined by Glorfindel, the Elf Lord. His arrival, it's like a beacon of hope, shows that there are still people willing to fight Sauron, even when it feels impossible.
Glorfindel's presence, it's important for another reason, too. Remember, he's one of the most powerful elves in Middle-earth. He fought Sauron, like way back in the day. His knowledge, his experience, they're invaluable to the hobbits.
And then the Ford of Bruin, right? The river guarding Rivendell, the Black Riders are closing in, feels like it's over. Gandalf unleashes this torrent of water, sweeps the Nazgul away.
It's just breathtaking. Tolkien describes the river rising up almost like a living thing, the Black Riders swept away by the flood. Symbolic, like even nature is against Sauron.
And finally, exhausted but safe, they cross the ford, find refuge in Rivendell. It's like stepping into another world. All the fear, the tension, it melts away, replaced by peace, tranquility.
Rivendell is more than just a place, I think. It's a symbol of hope, this haven of beauty, wisdom, where the ancient elven traditions are preserved, and it's here the fate of the ring is going to be decided.
And that's where the Council of Elrond comes in. Representatives from all the different races of Middle-earth, elves, dwarves, men, all coming together to discuss the threat of Sauron.
This is a pivotal moment. The stakes have never been higher. And the choices they make, they will determine the fate of Middle-earth.
We're introduced to some key figures here, right? Elrond, the Elf Lord, Glorfindel, the warrior, Gloin, representing the dwarves, and Boromir, this noble warrior from Gondor.
And each of them brings something different to the council. Elrond, wisdom, tradition. Glorfindel, courage, strength. Gloin, the dwarves' resilience. And Boromir, he brings the hope and the despair of men.
As the council talks, we get more stories from the past. Ancient battles, lost kingdoms, the long fight against Sauron. It's like Tolkien's giving us a crash course in Middle-earth history, showing us how the present is connected to the past.
And those stories, they're not just background. They're key to understanding what's happening now. They're about courage, sacrifice, the power of hope.
And then the debate. What to do with the ring? Boromir argues they should use it as a weapon against Sauron. He's a man of action. He's seen the destruction Sauron can cause.
But Gandalf and Elrond warn against that. They know the ring is seductive, that it corrupts anyone who uses it, even with good intentions.
And Gandalf tells his story about being imprisoned by Saruman, another wizard who's been seduced by the ring, a chilling reminder of the danger, the way evil works.
Right. And finally, the decision. The ring must be destroyed. It's the only way to defeat Sauron.
But destroying it means going to Mordor, to the heart of Sauron's power, and casting it into Mount Doom, where it was made. Seems impossible, like a suicide mission.
And yet it has to be done, and so the Fellowship is formed. Frodo, the ring-bearer, Sam, his faithful companion, Merry and Pippin, their hobbit friends, Aragorn, the rightful king, Gandalf, the wise, Legolas, the elf archer, Gimli, the dwarf warrior, and Boromir, the warrior of Gondor.
What a group. Different races, different cultures, bound together by this one purpose. And as they leave Rivendell, Their journey south begins.
The start of an epic adventure, a tale of courage, sacrifice, the enduring power of hope.
Wow, what a journey. We've just scratched the surface of Tolkien's world. I was so struck by how deep his creation is. It's not just a story, it's a whole world. History, languages, cultures, like he made a mythology for our time. What about you? What stood out to you the most?
For me, it's the power of small acts of courage. The hobbits, they're ordinary, unassuming, but they're the ones who save Middle-earth. They don't start out as heroes, but they find the strength inside themselves to face unimaginable danger. It reminds us that even the smallest person can make a difference, that even in the darkest times, there's always hope.
I love that. And to our listeners, if you're as captivated by Tolkien's world as we are, there's a link to the full free ebook in the episode description. Experience the magic of the Fellowship of the Ring for yourselves. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep that spark of wonder alive. Until next time on The Deep Dive.